Welcome back to some more Umineko When They Cry. So, where we last left off, it was a really short video of a part last time. That's all I can say. You know what? All you have to remember is that Balor finally came to his senses after, Anji, the game piece herself, uh, sacrificed herself in order to came to his senses and, in which she already revealed her identity anyway. So, yep, all you have to remember is that the game has now resumed. And, Beatrice, going back to her, you know, very evil, villainous self. So, I like to see how the Tea Party episode 4 goes. I'm actually pretty curious how will that turn out. The second day, October 5th, 1986. Everything's all empty. Time has moved forward. Wow. It's gonna keep. Wow, that's a big time jump there. Holy shit. Yep. I don't have a clue what's going on. Please, someone explain in a way even I can understand what happened yesterday. I was in the kitchen of the mansion, grabbing some food without permission. If you open up that massive business class refrigerator, you can find anything. You can eat and drink as much as you like. Even if the typhoon didn't clear up for a week, I'd have more than enough to eat. With wine in one hand, I was helping myself to some dry cured ham. I wonder just how expensive this wine and ham are. You, your you ingredients, excuse me, you ingredients are out of luck too. If only you'd had Goda-san to cook you, you could have been reborn as much more incredible food. I looked at the clock. Very soon it would be 2400 hours. October 5th, the second day, would end. The insane October 4th, yesterday seemed like a lie. That's how much nothing had happened after that test thing. Nothing happened. No phone call came, and no letters came. No person came, and no one attacked me. Nothing happened at all. I want to start demanding a refund on all the time and energy that tension stole from me, because after that, for an entire day, a full 24 hours, nothing happened. So surely, nothing's gonna happen now. A full 24 hours ago, Beatrice called me to the spot in front of the mansion's entrance. There, I was given a strange test to determine the successor to the headship or whatever. I gave a serious answer in my own way, but it somehow hadn't meshed with the other side. Beatrice got pissed for no reason and fell silent. Oh, that's a pretty interesting side glare right there. And fell silent. I yelled at her to try and say something, but she gave no answer. When I asked where Maria was, she just told me to go to the chapel and left. To tell the truth, it was an anticlimax. No matter what kind of weird test you give, at least tell me whether I passed or failed. Are you trying to say, thanks for coming, your results will be mailed to you later or something? Quit messing with me. Anyway, I then headed to the chapel. After failing their tests, both, both George Aniki and Jessica were killed. I couldn't let Maria get killed too. Is there anything? Oh shit. Tips got disabled too. God damn it, I was gonna check back. No, I didn't even check back at the fucking shit too. At least I can save. I mean, see what happened to characters. Yeah, so far it's only George that they've seen that got killed off. Witch's side, you already know this. And Anji's side as well. Well, same description. Okay. Well, that aside. Also, I might get a chance to catch some person trying to kill her. As a little kid, I often heard from Jessica that you get in trouble if you went near the chapel. So I never been there, but I at least knew where it was. I'm surprised. I am amazed that he's able to find the location after all these years. I couldn't find any trace of a person there, but there was a key bundle lying in front of the door. I thought this might be someone telling me to open the door, but after trying all the keys, I found that none of them fit. I also called Maria's name, but there was no answer whatsoever. I searched around the chapel, but there was a limit to what I could do in the pitch black with just a flashlight. I realized that this key bundle might be a set of master keys, which could make it possible to open the door to the mansion. I found no sign of Maria, so I returned to the mansion. Oh, we're going back to the mansion then. Well then, the mansion was wrapped in silence and in a horrible stench. However, it's amazing how good humans are at adapting. The inside of the mansion must still be wrapped up in that smell. However, I grew completely used to it and stopped minding it. It didn't seem any worse than any old house where someone had burnt some meat. At first, I was bewildered by the stench, but I decided to head to the dining hall for the time being. Uh-oh. Oh, shit. And found some corpses that were so pitiful, Goda-san and the rest had hesitated to speak of them in detail. It was the remains of Aunt Natsuki and the others who'd become the first victims. Half of each head had been completely split open, and it was so gruesome that even without knowing a thing about examining corpses, I could say that they were 100% dead. And on top of that, the remaining halves of their faces were left like normal, so it was even easy to identify them. Really convenient corpses, these were. And in addition of those six bodies was one more. This seventh corpse was Maria. She lay next to Aunt Rosa, as though sleeping alongside her. I cried at the death of an innocent young girl, and at the cruel way my dad and the rest had died. I raced through the mansion, swinging the hat stand spear, yelling, "Come out here, bastard!" But I couldn't find any trace of anyone else. Did it update it just now? Oh, it did. Oh, I see what happened in episode 4. You, so after all these these parts within episode 4, so far it's only Balor's perspective. You only seen George that died, but now he entered the diary room. All the deaths have been updated. So corpse in the dining hall. Her head was half destroyed. Reasonable to think she was murdered with something like a powerful gun. The witnesses don't believe that she was killed with a gun. There's that. Same with Hideyoshi, Eva, Rudolph, Rosa. There's Genji. Oh, the first six. And then there's Maria. Corpse discovered in the dining hall, unable to locate any notable external wounds. Badler speculated that it may have been some type of poisoning, the most peaceful method of inviting a person to the Golden Land. What? Did she die of food poisoning, or what is the one of? Okay, I can't even think of ways when it comes to Maria. Like she just, Maria lays dead in the freaking dining hall. So she's either faking her death, uh, she could be poisoned or food poisoned, or, I don't know. I can't, like I said, I couldn't think who killed her. Okay, but I couldn't find any trace of anyone else. Thinking they might be planning to hide somewhere and attack me from behind, I went around searching for hiding places, sometimes growing more cautious, and sometimes intentionally letting my guard down in various ways. But in the end, not even a kitten appeared. You don't think the Ushiromiya family owns a cat. Then morning came. My tension and fatigue, combined with my drowsiness, making for the worst kind of dawn. Humans are pretty incredible. Even when a murderer might have been hiding somewhere, we prioritize drowsiness and fatigue over our own lives. By that time, I was starting to feel pretty ridiculous. After all, for a full 6 hours before dawn, I'd walked around the mansion, yelling at the culprits to show themselves. My search had been a careful one, and I tired myself out and let my guard down. Even so, no one came to attack me. Basically, I lost patience with them and figured they could do whatever the hell they wanted. The boat won't come until the typhoon passes. They said on TV that it won't pass until tomorrow, so I've got another full day today. Lazing about lost its interest, and even though I knew it would probably make the police mad, I decided to play detective a bit. First was the dining hall, where the very first murder had occurred. The six who had been killed in the beginning really were pitiful. The weapon used was probably a gun, a shotgun of the sort, considering their heads got bursted off. Maybe their heads were split by something powerful like a magnum bullet or a shotgun. Well, probably a shotgun. It was a reasonable theory to hold. Compared to that, the seventh corpse, Maria, had died in a much better and cleaner way. At a glance, I could see no external wounds and didn't understand how she'd been killed, but by her mouth were traces of bubbles that she might have spat out, and it looked like a typical death by poisoning that you might see in a TV drama. Wasn't Maria called out to the chapel and given a test? So why was she in the corpse-filled dining hall, lying next to her mother, dead? Even if the cause of death was poison, who gave it to her? Her clothes weren't disturbed at all. It's hard to imagine that she was forcibly pushed down and given an injection of poison. It's probably better to assume that she was given a capsule, poison, or something and made to swallow it. But compared to the scattered and violently mutilated corpses in this room, Maria's corpse was too clean. If they had a gun, they only needed to pull the trigger. But poisoning, whether by having her drink it or by an injection, would take a lot more effort. Considering the culprit's brutal nature, you'd think Maria's death alone was given special treatment. Why was only Maria given a sleep like death? True, being killed is always a pitiful thing, but for some reason, Maria's death alone seemed very courteous to me. Both of Maria's hands were joined on her chest, as though the dead person had put them there herself. Did Maria do that herself before dying? Isn't this usually something done by someone else after the person dies? As though sleeping with her mother, whose head was half crushed, Maria dozed in peace. For some reason, that contrast really bugged me. Including the direct cause, it's probably safe to say that Maria's death is shrouded in mystery. And more than anything else, the biggest mystery of this dining hall was the pitfalls. The pitfalls that both Uncle Krause's group and Goda-san's had mentioned. After the first six were killed, five more fell through pitfalls, quote unquote, and were captured. What are pitfalls? Those things that suddenly open and you fall through them, right? The room had a solid floor with a carpet that looked dignified, if a bit worn out. No matter how you looked at it, it was single piece. If a pitfall had opened up, there would have been a seam just in that place. And if there had been some trick like a pitfall, Wouldn't it creak when you walked on it? No matter how much I walked around, feeling the carpet, I just couldn't imagine that a pitfall was hidden here. Anyway, it'd be one thing if a single person fell, but a full 5 people did. By putting together everyone's stories, each one of them had fallen from a different location. So at the very least, there had to be 5 separate places with pitfalls. So what does this mean? Was this room actually made with pitfalls across the entire floor? So by pushing a button, you could open up a pitfall in the location of your choice? Some kind of contraption like that? That kind of ridiculous mechanism would be surprising even in a ninja mansion. But if Dad and the rest had heard about this, I wonder if they'd. I wouldn't put it past Grandfather to do it, so to make it. At any rate, I didn't learn anything more from the dining hall. Do the pitfalls not exist? Or do they exist, but I just can't find them, amateur that I am? I can't say for sure, since they claim that the pitfalls were there. I can't ignore them, even if I can't find them. The next ones to be killed were Jessica and George Aniki. I discovered George Aniki when I'd been called out for my test. He had been called out to the arbor in the rose garden and probably shot in the forehead with a gun. Jessica had been called to her own room on the second floor of the mansion. The door to her room was locked, but that wasn't a problem at all since I had the master key. Inside the room, it was horrible. Oh, look, it seems Jessica that it seems to be that Jessica's dead body just flopped right there. There's the blood stain. That's it looks like someone shot her in the head. Someone headshotted her, and that's what happened. She got knocked off the chair while in the middle of her phone call. Inside the room, it was horrible. But after the dining hall, I was used to corpses, so I built up a bit of an immunity. The phone receiver was loose and dangling. Had she been killed while still on the phone with me? Jessica was leaning against the wall right next to me, with half of her head split open. As far as I could tell by glancing at the scene, it looked as though she'd been killed while on the phone. In that case, had the culprit been right there before her eyes? I hadn't gotten that impression when listening to Jessica's voice over the phone. I'm pretty sure Jessica said, "They got me." It's probably best to assume that she'd already received the fatal wound at the time of the phone call. That's right. And she also said this.
バトラーが来た時には私は頭を半分ぶちまけた死体だよ。
Yes, that's what she said. From what I could tell by looking at Jessica's corpse, there were no wounds on her other there were no wounds on her other than the damage to her head. Could she have had an injury serious enough to make her prepared for death and then died halfway through the phone call? But the way she talked on the phone made me think that she'd escaped harm for the time being. You shouldn't be able to have a casual conversation over a phone if the culprit's right before your eyes. So, did the culprit come in partway through the phone call and kill Jessica? No, that can't be right. After all, this room was locked. Wait, that doesn't tell me anything. If the culprit stole a master key from one of the victims, locking the door would be meaningless. But she had no external wounds other than her head. In that case, should I assume that the fatal wound she was prepared to die from and the actual external wound that damaged her head were two different things? and that both of them were made to the same part of the body? In other words, Jessica was struck severely to the head and received an incredibly bad wound. Then she called me and either lost consciousness or died while on the phone. I mean, that's one way to put it. I mean, people can, people can can survive a severely fatal headshot and have a temporary time limit, or died while on the phone. Then the culprit came and damaged her head again, something like that. Well, I guess something like that. Well, I guess that's one way to come up with a scenario. After being called to this room, Jessica was attacked by the culprit and received a serious injury. Then the culprit thought she'd been killed and went away for the time being. But Jessica miraculously started breathing again and called me with what would become her dying message. Then the culprit realized that they'd failed to kill her and rushed back to deliver the final blow after Jessica fell unconscious from massive blood loss. That seems to add up more or less, except for now, except for how Jessica was able to accurately predict the nature of that final blow. And there was one more thing that bugged me about the phone call from Jessica. Jessica had said this.
庄司兄さんもダメだった。ありゃ即死だ。
She said it almost as though she'd witnessed George Aniki being killed, but while you certainly could see the rose garden from the window in Jessica's room, and you could even see the roof of the arbor where George Aniki had been summoned, it was very far away. Add on the fact that it was the night of the typhoon, night of a typhoon, whatever, and it's very hard to imagine that she was able to witness everything that happened by the arbor from this window. And more than anything else, Jessica left before George Aniki, so she shouldn't have known that George Aniki's test took place by the arbor. Why did Jessica know that George Aniki had been killed? Also, during my search of the entire mansion, I found Kairi-san's corpse as well. Okay, so that one is updated for... Okay, so let's see, where... Yeah, Jessica. Her head was half destroyed. It seems murdered with something like a powerful gun. Destroyed herself with her own strike, with George's counter-attacking type barrier. Then there's Kyrie. Uh, there was a single hole right in the center of her forehead. It was shot with a gun. A demon stake was rammed into her forehead, but it is difficult to imagine that this was the cause of death. I didn't miss. I missed on purpose to torment her. Yeah, God. I couldn't imagine it would be her narrating the last sentence. And then there's Beatrice. Yeah. I found Kairi-san's corpse as well. It was in one of the old guest rooms at the back of the first floor. In the past, before the construction of the guest house, the relatives had spent the night in these. Kiri-san's situation matched matched Jessica's perfectly. She'd probably been killed during her phone call with me. The receiver was hanging untidily, and Kiri-san lay crumpled in that corner. But the way she had been killed was very different from Jessica. Her head wasn't smashed. Instead, a stake with an occult design was buried into her forehead. It was so gruesome, so I pulled it out. After pulling it, I realized that this might get me into trouble with the police later. So, a little too late, I set it down by Kiri-san's side, though with a way to taint the evidence. Its tip was sharp and stained with enough blood that it must have penetrated fully to the brain. I didn't know what kind of metal it was made of, but it was about as heavy as a paperweight. Certainly, if you were stabbed all out with something like this, it might cause a terrible wound, or no shit. I probably knew what that stake meant. It's one of those. The style of killing from the fourth twilight onwards in the witch's epitaph. It's probably that gouge with a stake and kill thing. However, a human skull is very firm, no matter how much someone mustered their strength. Could it really have been pierced so neatly? No. By my reasoning, this stake wasn't the cause of death, but had just been used to damage the corpse after death. She was probably killed with a gun or something, like George Aniki, and the stake had been stuck into the hole left by the gun. Thinking of it that way makes it easier to accept. But was Kiri-san really killed with a gun? As she said on the phone, even though she was holed up inside a locked room, Kiri-san was being attacked. In fact, this room had been locked. Also, she mentioned the golden thread or something flying in and attacking her. In fact, there were four places around Kiri-san's corpse with holes that could have been caused by some kind of attack. But still, a golden thread attacked her through the keyhole? I looked at the door from Kiri-san's perspective. If it had been one of those old keyholes you see in old mystery movies, where you can peek through to the other side, then it would have clearly been possible to stick something through it. But even though the doors in this mansion were old fashioned, the locks were the familiar, average average cylinder style that you could find in any normal house. Excuse me. In other words, they weren't constructed. Oh god. In other words, they weren't constructed in a way that would let you penetrate through them. So no matter how thin an object you might try to stick through the keyhole, it's unthinkable that something penetrated through from the outside and attacked. A cylinder lock and a keyhole? Now I'm actually curious. I wonder if you can actually shoot a bullet through a keyhole. I guess that's kind of one way to murder someone if if the victim is like lock the door, but it's like I guess it really varies. And a keyhole? But despite that, Kiri-san definitely said that something like a golden thread had flown in through the keyhole, spun around while aiming for her, and attacked her. A golden thread attacking through a keyhole. I couldn't understand what it meant at all. But even so, Kiri-san probably predicted that I wouldn't be able to understand all this. And it wasn't just Kiri-san. Jessica said it over the phone too. No, since the very beginning, from the time we talked with Goda-san and Kumasawa-san and got the phone call from Uncle Krause's group, everyone has said the same consistent thing. Grandfather summoned witches and demons and is killing people with magic. They've been shown that right before their eyes. These weren't tricks or fakes. There was no choice but to believe it. With one voice, they had all said that. When the mystery woman calling herself Beatrice appeared, even I had pretty much believed that she was a real witch and might start summoning goat monsters right and left. However, after being left alone for a whole day, my feeling of tension had faded completely. I was now able to think that something so stupid definitely couldn't be true. Did they lose their heads a little in an extraordinary situation where their lives were exposed to danger and mistakenly think that a witch was attacking them with magic? But multiple people gave the same kind of testimony, and on top of that, none of their opinions conflicted each other. If it had just been a single statement, I'd be able to suspect that they just didn't see what they thought they saw. But doing that now is pretty difficult. Then, right next to the back door, I found Uncle Kraus with his head half smashed. Even though he escaped the dungeon of Kuadorian and somehow made it this far by a secret underground passage, he had been killed. Yep, it'd be like that. Yep, there's Kraus. Discovered in the Vic- vicinity, vicinity of whatever pronounce of the mansion's back entrance, his head was half destroyed. Something powerful gun, a demon stake was rammed into the destroyed portion of his head. None can escape the Chiester's golden arrows. By a secret underground passage, he had been killed. Buried into the gruesome cross section of his half crushed head was a stake with an occult design, like the one that had been buried into Kiri-san's forehead. And in this situation, it was very hard to imagine that this stake was the weapon used. He had been killed with a powerful gun like the six in the dining hall, and after death, had been jabbed with the stake like Kiri-san. I wonder if the golden threads that Kiri-san spoke of attacked Uncle Kraus too. Does there exist some kind of tool, like an endoscope, that's very thin but can be moved about at will, and that can also attack people? No way. I never heard of anything like that. But even so, if this fact had been revealed to one of the relatives, maybe they'd say, I wouldn't put it past grandfather to make it. Since I can't deny the existence of Golden Thread X that can be moved at will and attack people, I can either accept that this mysterious weapon exists or else I'll have to accept that this was a murder committed with magic. Hmm. A golden thread chasing them. Hmm. If a thread is this small that you can hardly see, can it be that? Huh. See, that's the thing. Both Kiri and Kraus, they look like they got shot by the gun, but the golden thread is like maybe the firearms were booby trapped? I don't know. Oh, a homing bullet? That's pretty debatable. That's a hard fence to sit on if you ask me. Excuse me. Committed with magic. To find the next corpse, I had to go out through the back door and search around outside a bit. Behind the mansion, in the wild grown bushes that were almost swallowed up by the forest, there was something like an old well. Oh, would you look at that? An old well. See, that's a background I've not seen before. There's another one, like an old well, and right next to it were Dr. Nanjo and Shannon Chan's corpses. Both corpses had their heads smashed, and though they weren't stuck in, there were stakes lying next to there were stakes lying right next to each other, right next to each damaged head. Each corpse was atrocious, but having to look directly at Shannon Chan's lovely face, which had been half blown away, was very painful. Then there was the well. Well, pretty unfortunate. Then there was the well. I'd heard that inside it was a secret underground passage to the mysterious mansion, Kuadorian. By this time, I'd begun to think that Beatrice and her accomplices might have used this underground passage and left for Kuadorian. Even though there had apparently been at least 10 of them, I hadn't seen a trace of anyone. It seemed very likely that they'd already escaped to a different location. There's the typhoon. They can't go out to sea. It goes the same for the forest. There's no way they could traverse such a deep, uncultivated forest on foot. In that case, they had only one place to go. The mysterious hidden mansion, Kuadorian, through the secret underground passage at the bottom of the well. By this time, I had entirely lost my fear of being killed if I happened to come across the enemy. Don't fuck with me. This time, I'll storm into your mansion.
あ、なんだこりゃ。ちくしょう。
Well, while my cough started to come back, it's like daggers, like into my throat. The old well had a firm cover on it. The cover was an iron grill, like a little lid. Think of like a entrance to the sewers, but it's like a manhole covering it. The gaps between the bars were perhaps 20 centimeters across. You could peer inside, but it really wasn't something a human could pass through. If I hadn't known better, I wouldn't have thought it anything more than a simple cover to prevent falls. But from what Kiri-san had told me, I knew that its purpose was to prevent intruders from entering the secret underground passage in its depths. But the cover was extremely firm and rigid, and no matter how much I pushed or pulled, I couldn't even get close to opening it. Okay, man. I couldn't find any obvious lock. It might be sealed by some mechanism. But no matter how much I investigated it, I couldn't find anything to release it. The biggest piece of information Kiri-san had tried to give me, gambling her final moments, was the underground passage in this well.
こんな二程度で俺を阻めると思うんじゃねえぜ。こいつをぶち壊してやれ。その道具を探そう。
Looking for a tool, I guess finding something like a crowbar-like tool. Crowbar. I had an idea. After all, I'd seen the various tools in the gardening shed when we'd locked Goda-san and Kumasawa-san in there. But the shutter to the gardening shed was locked. Well, no, you probably already realized it just now. On top of that, the key was with Goda-san, who was dead on the inside. In other words, this gardening shed was a closed room. There's no way to open it from the outside. In that case, I've got to break the shutter. There has to be a tool for that somewhere. Kind of feels like I'm going in circles here. Then, while searching for that, I learned that the source of the stench that had pre-meted the mansion this whole time was the underground boiler room. Hmm, the stench from the underground boiler room. Could it be that there's also a dead body somewhere in the boiler room that has been the cause of it? The boiler room was dimly lit, humid, smelled horrible, and on top of all that, was incredibly creepy. Alright, let's go back to characters again. Also, I'm getting fucking hungry again. Holy shit. I probably need to go BRB and find something to eat. Let's see, where is it? No. Oh, Dr. Nanja. His head was half destroyed, seemed he's of a gun or something. Demon Snake was lying next to the corpse, and that goes for Shannon. A demon snake was lying next to the corpse. The witnesses understand one thing at least. It was not the steak that killed her. Well, discovered behind the mansion. That goes with Nanju as well. Okay, as far as I know, it looks like all of the characters in episode 4, within the human side, made it so that their heads got blown off by a firearm or gun of the sort. But anyway, but there were several large tools there, and I managed to find a fire hatchet and some massive wire cutters. And grandfather's corpse. Oh shit! See, I knew it. So Kinzo. Wait, in episode 1, Kinzo got killed off too in the same way, in the boiler room. The fuck? Now episode 4 is the same way as well. Grandfather's corpse. No, strictly speaking, I should probably say that I found a burnt corpse of a person who was probably grandfather. Someone's corpse had been stuffed into the blazing fires of the boiler. However, by coincidence, I was able to notice the number of toes in the corpse. Both feet had 6 toes. That's right. I think I heard it from Dad some time long ago. Something about grandfather having polydactyly with extra toes. According to old Ushiromiya family tradition, it seems that those with extra fingers or toes had some kind of good fortune and were treated as a good omen. And because of that, grandfather was selected to be the successor or something. But I wonder if I can be certain this is grandfather's body just from the number of toes. After all, grandfather was supposed to be the leader of the group of culprits. I didn't have a clue why he'd get stuffed into a boiler in a place like this and die. A mysterious corpse, burning and spitting out a terrible stench amid the flames. If it really was grandfather, did that mean that the leader of the group of culprits wasn't grandfather, but that Beatrice after all? Um, maybe. I mean, in episode 4, it made it look like Kinzo was responsible for all of that nonsense. But who knows? I mean, it could probably be that. Oh, God. That is a little bit trippy there if you think about it that way. I mean, maybe. I mean, it makes a. Um, excuse me. I guess you can say that. What you call it? Kinzo was told to carry out that kind of responsibility by one of Beatrice's accomplices or whatever, but because Kinzo was studying, I'm or being really passionate with the whole studying of black magic. So, grandfather was used because he was convenient and was then thrown away? Unfortunately, it didn't look like I'd be given a chance to hear grandfather's side of the story. Yeah, because he's already freaking dead. Now that I had attained a tool, I thought about rushing to take on the cover to the well, but I decided to break the shutter to the gardening shed first. I had plenty of time to kill anyway. I figured I should check on the condition of Goda-san's and Kumasawa-san's corpses. I hit the shutter with the hatchet, breaking into it, stuck the wire cutter into the crack, and scissored it around, opening up a hole. Then, I faced Goda-san and Kumasawa-san's corpses once more. Fucking pitiful as hell. It's like a scene I would see in a horror game. Well, it's not really a horror game because it's a visual novel, but it looks like you know a first-person view horror game scene right here. Kumasawa-san's corpses once more. As a result, I learned a new fact. First, they had not died by being hung by the neck. Both of their feet were solidly on the floor, and on both of their foreheads were signs that they'd been shot with a gun. The loop seemed longer than a normal noose. On top of that, the length was different. The length was different on each to match the height of each person. In other words, the lens had been adjusted so that both Goto-san, who was tall, and Kumasawa-san, who was short, had their feet solidly but barely on the ground. Also, while the ropes carried both of their weights, as their heads as their heads lolled, both of them had some slack below their knees. This meant that if they stood up with these loops around their necks, there would have been some extra length. In other words, these loops wouldn't have been that great for hanging people. The direct cause of death was probably a shot to the head. It was gruesome. Yep, it is definitely all gruesome as always. Alright, let's see. Where is it? Kurosawa. Corpse discovered in a rose garden storehouse. It is hypothesized that she was shot in the forehead and then strung up by her neck. As long as a locked room could be constructed, anything would have sufficed. The same thing, they themselves put their necks in the nooses. It was an it, it was an interesting experience to try on occasion. Anyway, that aside, I feel us okay. So far, so all of them died by the freaking headshot. Well, both Kumasawa and Goda hung up by the neck. So the only thing left is Kano. So there's that. It was gruesome. Their insides were still dripping out from those gaping holes, staining their faces a deep red. It's probably best to assume that they were then hung, pulled up, and left exposed like that. If they'd been shot with a gun, they would probably have been lying down on the floor. If that had been the case, you wouldn't have been able to tell they were dead, even if you peeked through the window. The mountain of stuff would have gotten in the way, so if they'd been lying down, they would have been hidden. True. To make the deaths of these two known to the rest of us who couldn't go inside, they would have had to hang them like this, making it visible from the outside. Was this done to get back at us for thinking that those two would surely be safe if we left the key with them? I wonder where the shutter key we gave Goda-san. which should have ensured their safety, is now. That key was in the pocket of his trousers. The gardening shed key had been kindly left there, and even the plate was attached. In other words, the gardening shed had been a closed room after all. Would ensure their safety is now. And that gave rise to another question. Because this can't be explained by a hanging. If they didn't commit suicide, then those nooses were set up by the culprit. I mean, pretty smart from the culprit, if you ask me. It might have been possible to shoot them through the window, but it's really unthinkable that someone could have tied two loops to the beam from the outside. And furthermore, there's no way they could have lifted up the heavy corpses. In other words, to do all of this, they would have had to go inside. But the key was in Goda-san's pocket, and the shutter had been locked. In other words, the gardening shed had been a closed room. Goda-san had said that there was only one key to the shutter, but is it possible that there was a copy and that the culprit was in possession of it? That's a good question. Was in possession of it? If we're allowed to theorize that there actually was a duplicate of the gardening storehouse key, and that Goda-san just didn't know about it, then this isn't even close to a closed room. It would have been solved because it come off as a bit obvious. But why is it that despite the fact that almost all of the other corpses were shot to death and left almost completely alone, just these two corpses were intentionally hoisted up? I couldn't help but feel something a bit odd about that. After this, if we assume that the mystery corpse in the boiler was grandfather's, the deaths of 16 people have been confirmed. There were 18 people on this island. I'm here, and there are 16 corpses. Kanon-kun's corpse is the only one I haven't been able to confirm. Well, it seems that so 16 deaths have been confirmed, and we already explored enough from the Rose Gardening storehouse. We're back at the well. According to Kiri-san, he had been killed while climbing out of the well and had fallen down into it. So with the well closed up like this, it's impossible to check. I mean, if you think it's impossible to check, I mean, might as well explore it down yourself, right? Alright, before I continue more of this, I gotta get something to eat, so I'll be right back. Alright, I am back. Did a little bit of snacking of the sort, but, maybe I, feel a bit more or less better, who knows? But, off topic, but I think I remember this, I wouldn't say it's a bit of a controversial food take, since I was snacking on it, but I was busy snacking and all that shit, but there's a bit of a food take that I heard that come to mind, is like, I'm not gonna mention any name of who said it, but apparently the breakfast food that person didn't like is waffles and Pop-Tarts. And then sat back and I'm like, well, I pity people like you that, don't have the taste buds, or, that can, or the taste buds to like tolerate anything, honestly. But I don't know. I don't know what it's like to have the perspective of someone else that doesn't really alike that sort of thing in mind. But yeah. Anyway, let's continue reading. Oh man. So as far as we know, Balor discovered all dead corpses because apparently Balor himself is the only survivor in this this session of Rokujima right here. So after he found Goda and Kumasawa from the Rose Garden storehouse, now the only he's got to find Kanon, which is probably in the well because he said it did say something where whatchamacallit, he died like right when he was about to escape out of the well and fell back down. So yeah, anyway. I tried shining a flashlight through the bars down into the darkness in the depths of the well, but it seemed that the jet black darkness had no intention of showing me its depths with a light of that level. It's a it's a long deep down, ain't it? It looked like I had to break the bars after all. Using the hatches Using the hatchets and things I dragged from the boiler room and the gardening shed, I tried breaking the cover of the well, but the metal bars were extraordinarily sturdy, and breaking them wasn't easy. I hit them with the hatchet over and over until my hands started feeling weird, and eventually gave up on breaking them. It's impossible. If they were at least wood, might have been able to break them, but this metal, that's right. There's no way you can slice through metal bars like butter with a human strength. I can't even begin to understand that story about how Canon can cut through metal bars. I heard that a light like a red laser beam grew out of his arm, and that he sliced through the metal bars like he was cutting through butter. Cutting through metal bars like butter? And what's with the red laser beam? Does that mean he secretly had a burner on him or something? And used that to burn through the bars? Still, just what kind of laser could cut through metal bars like butter? Maybe he had like a tool with him. Maybe he had a tool in hand within the human perspective. I don't know. Metal bars like butter. It almost sounds like the kind of laser beam you'd find in those robot anime I loved as a kid, doesn't it? Most likely. uh, loved as a kid, doesn't it? Does something like that actually exist? And how did Kanonkin get that laser beam? No matter how much I want to ask him, he's already been killed. Plus, even his corpse is now in the depths of the well, beyond this cover. If Kanonkin could slice through metal bars, I'm sure he could handle this metal cover in a single swing. It feels just like the closed room Koda-san was locked in while holding the key. Is it updated for Canon as well? No, not yet. Was locked in while holding the key. Only one person can open the door, but they're locked inside. If only I had that power of Kanonkin's, I'd be able to do something about this cover myself. Just who is Kanonkin? He couldn't really be a non-human being capable of using a strange power, right? Kiri-san told me to believe in witches, and I even met an insane woman calling herself one. Could Kanonkin possibly be a human on the witch's side? Or else the culprit? What the heck? Am I gonna start treating him like the culprit just because I can't find his corpse?
ほう、死体がないだけで犯人扱い。
Well,
疑わしきは白だとほざいたのは誰だったやら。よかろう。カノンに全ての犯行を押し付けて人間犯人説にされてはかなわぬ。わらわが赤にて保証する。 カノンは死亡している。
Canon is dead.
キリエたち5人の中で一番最初に死亡した。
Among the five in Kiri's group, he was the first to die. Well, true. He did get killed first before the other four.
つまりは9人目の犠牲者というわけだ。
In short, he was the ninth victim.
死体がない以上カノン君が死亡しているとは断言できない。
わらわが赤でささやいたところで駒であるそなたには届かぬ。
And red does not reach the peace.
だそなたには届いたよな。
But it did reach you, right? At a glance, this was a mass murder due to something strange that could only be thought of as magic. Golden threads that attacked through keyholes. No, we even have testimony that something gold flew around the dining hall when the first six died. The two might have been the same weapon. Then there was the closed room murder of the garden shed, and the laser beam that could cut metal bars. Laser beam. Hand. I mean, what is this, like, you know, Canon being, I don't know. Well, if he ain't human, then it could be, then what if it's just a robot created? Robot, the human android, like android humanoid furniture, whatever the fuck. Laser beam that could cut metal bars. And that wasn't all. There was much, much more, like the group of goat monsters, the story of a witch who could create pitfalls just by snapping her fingers, the rabbit-like demons who had fired golden threads. I think there was more, but each part was all screwed up. I couldn't possibly accept it, and was forced to suspect that it was some kind of trick or mistake. But why in the world had everyone spoken with one voice, saying the same thing without contradictions in their testimony? It's not only the magic. There's Maria's mysterious death. Why Jessica knew that George Aniki had been killed. The mysterious burnt corpse that I couldn't confirm really belonged to that damn geezer. And more and more. All stuff I don't get. I tilted the wine bottle up and gulped. I don't have a clue what's going on. After dinner last night, the kids were chased out and told to go back to the guest house, and then there was a massacre in the dining hall. Kiri-san and the rest were dropped through pitfalls and captured. Then, Jessica and George Aniki were called out to take a test, or whatever, and killed. Even though Kiri-san's group was able to escape the dungeon somehow, all of them got killed in the end. And at the very, very end, when even Maria was killed, leaving me all alone. In short, I did nothing except stay locked up in the guest house. During that time, a huge incident occurred and ended. What can I call it except incomprehensible? I don't have a clue anymore. Well, I guess solving this whole mystery shenanigans is a bit convoluted if you think about it that way. I don't have a clue anymore. Me neither.
もう俺はただの食欲魔人なんだぜ。俺だけ生き残らせるつもりかよ。とっとと姿を現して殺しに来いってんだ。もう 面倒だからこっちからは探さねえぞ。そっちから正体を見せやがるってんだ。俺は逃げも隠れもしねえぞ。矢でも鉄砲でも持ってきやがれ。
I haven't gotten any sleep since yesterday, so I'm incredibly sleepy. You want to kill me? Go ahead. I decided to return to the guest house and boldly rest in a bed. When I exited the kitchen and passed through the lobby, that portrait of the witch came into view. The big clock did too. It was almost exactly 2400. Then the sound of the bell rang out, proclaiming that 2400 hours had arrived. It is midnight. Let's go. As I listened, I looked up at Beatrice's portrait. Exactly 24 hours ago, I met you. What were you trying to say? And where did you go? Just who in the world are you? Golden Witch, Beatrice. Oh God, a bit of a cough coming back again. I haven't solved a single one of the riddles surrounding you. Show yourself and fight me. Then the witch showed herself. Like a guest of honor finally appearing, she showed herself on the landing at the top of the big staircase.
ようやく姿を現しやがったな。丸一日退屈させられてたところだぜ。
One day can be really slow if you're bored, so I I can relate on that.
そうだ。丸一日を与えた。人間側の権利行使は十分か。
ああ、退屈だったんでな。存分にやらせてもらったぜ。
エンジェは良い駒であったね。
Pretty smart one too. I ain't gonna lie.
エンジェの名をお前が口にするんじゃねえ。
Don't you dare speak her name.
あれは奇跡によって現れ、自らを生贄にしてそなたに絶対の勝利の執念を与えた。
Yeah. She not only created a miracle and gave Maria's made Maria acknowledge the magic, and gave Battler the courage.
エンジェの名を口にするな。
あの無残な死はそなたにとって必要なものだった。あの死を見なければそなたは本気にならない。エンジェのサチウスキ未来を自覚しなければそなたに勝利の執念は生まれない。
Uh-oh. She said her name again. He's gonna be mad.
エンジェの名を口にするなと言っている。
I knew it. Oh shit.
つまりは必要な生贄だったというわけだ。そうでなくてはそなたにわらわを殺すほどの怒りは生まれない。わらわとそなたの拮抗が崩せない。
The never-ending rivalry.
ベルンカステル共鳴。これは駒ではないわ。切り札と呼ぶがふさわしい。
I mean, it might as well be.
駒はどれほど活躍しようと 盤上を離れることはない。しかし切り札はどんな力を発揮しようとも切れば確実に捨てられる。
Yeah. Even though the rule for Aji is to like use another alias to cover her identity, 'cause- so yeah. Even though the rule says for herself is to not reveal her identity, she has to do it just to give Ballard the courage to give Ballard the real objectives of why Angie cares for Ballard so much, you know.
エンジェはそなたにとって実に良き切り札だったのだ。
She said her name, yeah, 5 times. Oh man, and after that, Ballard is gonna lose his shit.
エンジェの名を口にするんじゃな。
Yep. At Battler's angry roar, Beato finally stopped talking.
俺はな、こんなところで遊んでる暇はもう一切ねえんだ。引き分けすらもエンチを待たせてる。俺はな、お前を打ち破り家族を連れて家に帰るんだよ。てめえと魔女ごっこで遊んでる暇は1秒たりともありはしない。
ならばどうすればよいか分かっているの。
ああ、お前をぶっ倒す。魔女も魔法も幻想も妄想も全て俺がぶっ飛ばす。さあ、追っ始めようぜ。もう二度とごまかさせない。ゲーム再開だぜ。お前という嘘っぱちを追う魔女のベールを俺が引き裂いてやる。
長いわ。素直に一言わらわを殺してやると言えばよい。
ああ、その言葉をお望みなら言ってやるさ。俺が聞いてやるお前の望みで最初で最後のものだ。
感謝する。
お
Well,
前も
at least that is settled. This is what she's been saying. No words. Come on.
お前を殺す。
ならばよし。
Wow. In big red letters too.
始めようぞバトラー。さあ魔女狩りの時間だ。わらわを追ってみろ、追い詰めてみろ、殺してみろ。わらわはそなたに期待している。妹の最後がそなたに何を与えたのか、それをわらわに見せてみよ。
上等だ。
Battler's cry burned the world with a white light. And if you open your eyes amidst the darkness, the two of them could be seen in a rose garden.
先手はどちらから。
俺だ。
Alright, let's see the debate. This is a pretty red rose garden too.
潔よし。
Nah, Balor's like, nah man, I go first. Yo, this new track, this is a banger. Alright. Let's see. Yeah, let's end it from here. Alright. Next part. Let's see how the real battler, the real battler. Let's see how the real battle commences. So, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Have a good one.